And the reason why, so like to add the science part, right? The reason why is remember when, I mean, you studied science, but for the rest of us, remember probably middle school in science, we talked about this idea of homeostasis, right? Our body is designed to maintain equilibrium. So it's going to fight us when we're trying to make these changes. Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. We have a new friend with us, George. Thank you for joining me from a distance.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Yeah. So George, full disclosure, everybody, George is a relatively new client and a hairdresser. I was just saying I probably should have put myself together a little bit more.
You look great. You look great.
Thank you. At least the video isn't going anywhere, right? It's just for us. So George, you're about halfway through the program with me. So I'm just curious if you want to share something about your experience so far.
Yeah, what I'm really surprised.
Put you on the spot.
That's completely fine. What I'm really surprised about, I was thinking about this yesterday, is how much I'm learning about food that I didn't know I didn't even know. And I'm pretty. My mother would call me a wise guy. I'm pretty smart about things, and I've been on diets. I'm 53 years old. I've been on a diet since I was 12, pretty much. So I must have lost over 500 pounds in my lifetime, I'm sure. And yeah,
amazing.
And I've learned a lot of things about food and understand food. And I was a science major in college, all of that stuff. But actually, the relevance that I'm learning about pairing foods together and the understanding about proteins and nutrition and how all of this works together is really demystifying a lot of the challenges I've had about eating. And actually, even though I'm only halfway through and I'm still on the first part of the program's eating regime, I can actually see myself learning how to eat the foods that I love to eat that right now are kind of like still like, no, I can't have that. But actually, I could see that happening. And that's really life-changing if I think about my future, not having to be on a diet for the rest of my life. That's really cool.
Yeah, liberating, right?
Very serious.
Well, that's awesome. I'm so excited for you, your success so far, and everything that lies ahead.
I have lost 17 pounds in 6 weeks, which is pretty great.
Amazing. Yeah, good for you. You are on your way, my friend. Awesome. So for today's topic, this is actually particularly interesting to have you here because we're talking about plateaus, guys. And it's one of those words that many of us use when we feel like we're doing the right things, but the scale isn't moving. And I've also been referencing this and promising you all this episode. So it's here. We're doing it. Today is the day. And part of why this is so important is because most people are misusing the word. Dun, dun, dun. I need sound effects, right? Most people are misusing the word. So today we're going to clear it all up and talk about how we can break through to the other side. Right? Now I need Doors music.
Come on through to the other side.
Yeah, thank you. That was exactly what we needed. All right. So to set the stage, let's just chat about what most of us think of as a plateau. So George, I know we've just talked about this briefly. In your past, what's been happening when you've said, oh, I hit a plateau?
Well, there's I would say there's the experience of the realization of the plateau, which really sucks, which is like 2 or 3 days in a row of the same weight, 2 or 3 days of the same kind of feeling, whether it's being bloated for a while or being, just kind of like stuck where I am. So there's that realization. And then there's the ensuing pattern of behavior that emerges, or I always say reemerges, which is like, oh,
Mhm.
screw it, just screw it. And then I giving up on
Yeah.
something,
Right.
feeling like, well, whatever, or I've got to work harder, or this doesn't really work. It's just like everything else. And I've got to starve myself to eat. And, and it's not, I would say it's not just the plateau about food and nutrition. It's other plateaus, whether it be my career, building my client base, my relationships, even, where it's kind of like just the same old, and is this just it? So there's a certain kind of ensuing, everything starts to like my view of life darkens a little bit. I wouldn't say like dismal, but like cloudy.
Yeah, it's like this extreme motivation killer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or we feel like whatever we're doing doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Like it did work, but now it doesn't. And to be honest, this idea of, this isn't working is one of the most counterproductive thoughts we can have in this whole process.
Yeah.
Just like we were saying, it's this motivation killer in the following behavior patterns that happen. So when we're doing this, it can throw us off of our consistency when we've hit this quote unquote plateau, because we let it be an excuse to be, more indulgent,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or have these choices, or we let it push us. Alternatively, we can let it push us into this more restrictive eating that's also not sustainable.
Yep.
And so on both sides of the
Yep.
equation, it can
Yeah,
be a
I've had the
problem.
thought, I've had a lot of success, I would say, in air quotes for those of you that can't see, but I've had a lot of success in uh, being on, I've juice fasted for 47 days. No,
Oh
no
my
long,
goodness.
no,
Was that the
no,
master
yeah, no, it
cleanse?
was the master cleanse for 10 days, and then it was not 47 days. I'm sorry, it's 60 days. It was 2 months. I lost 47 pounds in 2 months' time. I kept off about half of that for about a year, but there was that half that I immediately gained back. And then the idea that that's an effective way to drop the weight, it's not an effective way to live your life, but it's an effective way to drop the weight. And then what happened immediately, when I started to hit a plateau with this current program, is I had the thought like, oh, geez, I might as well just not eat. And that kind of literally, I started to think I should
Ah,
go back to the other thing and give up on what this is. And I said, no, 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 just stick to it, just stick to it, just stick to it. And then I just dropped a few, my weight loss jumped, without changing anything.
yep,
So that was really
right.
remarkable.
Yeah, and it also, some of these things that we've all done in the past, it also comes down to what are we losing the weight as, right? Are we removing fat? Or what often happens with things like that is that we're losing the weight as water and
Mm-hmm.
muscle and sometimes even bone. So that's a whole other conversation. You guys can go back to I think it was one of our beginning episodes. I want to say it was called How the Hell Did We Get Here? I think. Um, but you're right. It's like we hit these moments of a quote unquote plateau or what we think of as a plateau. And then all of a sudden our brain goes to these extremes. So I think it's critical for us to understand also a true plateau because you've mentioned, oh, it's a couple days of feeling this way. Or even sometimes people say, oh, it's been a week or a couple weeks, and things haven't changed. So I guess, George, I'm
It's
going to put
okay.
you on the
It's
spot
okay.
again. What do you think qualifies as a true plateau?
Well, I would say that's a good question because I can see usually, well, honestly, with this last round, my
Mhm,
a true plateau would be where I'm consistently doing all the things that are in the design of the program, and I'm not seeing
mhm.
any change for a while. That would mean consistently, like I'm doing the exercise at least 3 times a day. I'm actually really, journaling
Wait, 3 times a
Oh,
week.
three
We're not
times a week.
exercising
Sorry,
3
sorry.
times a day. Yeah, right.
Whoa, do I have high
Just
expectations?
to
I
clear
have
it
high
up. Yeah, right.
expectations. Oh boy. Yeah, 3 times a week, right? It's like I'm actually doing the exercises the way it's, the way the program's designed, and I'm actually following everything through all of that, and I see no results for a while. And I would say a while meaning honestly, because I'm not weighing myself the way I used to, it's harder to notice the
Good.
results, right? I haven't weighed myself since you told us not to, and I haven't seen the numbers change because I haven't been looking at the numbers.
Okay.
Um, but my clothes have changed. Like I'm down to another belt
Ah.
loop that I can get to. I mean, I got to a point during COVID where I stopped wearing belts. Well, I stopped wearing pants, honestly, but that's yeah.
Right.
But when I started to put my pants back on, I
We're all in that
exactly
boat.
I
Let's
had
be
this
real.
one thing that would remind me of my weight, which was what loop my belt was on. So normally on my skinnier days, my belt would be like on the fourth loop, and that was for a while. And then it was the third loop, and then it was this. And then when COVID, like when we reemerged out of the cocoon, it was like the second loop,
Yeah.
and that kind of was tight. And I'm like, oh my gosh! And now it's back down to the third loop, kind of okay. So
Okay.
there's that noticing that. But that to answer your question specifically, uh, I can pretend that I'm going through a plateau and really not acknowledging the fact that I haven't been exercising. So is it fair to say I'm on a plateau, or is it, or am I
Great
just not
question.
doing it by its design? And if I put the design in, would it start moving again? So it's
Exactly. Exactly. And we're going to come back to that. And you're right, like this idea of how consistent are we with the plan? How are we measuring our results, right? So just to put it out there for everybody, a true plateau, the definition is absolutely zero measurements moving for 4 consecutive
4.
weeks. So for so like a full 4 weeks, no weight loss, no inches lost, and no body fat lost. And when I say lost, I mean removed because we're not looking to find
Yes,
it again,
thank you.
right?
Thank you.
So we're removing that. So none of those measurements can change for 4 weeks. And so what you just shared is exactly what we're talking about, which is that like sometimes the number on the scale isn't changing, but our body is shifting and we're on a different belt loop or our clothes feel differently. And so things are happening. And that doesn't mean you hit a plateau. It means your body is adjusting,
Well, wow. I don't
right?
think I've ever really had a lot of patience then because I'm like instant gratification, got to get there now. And 4 weeks it
Yeah.
seems like a long time to assess a situation to determine whether I'm at a plateau. By 4 weeks I could have gotten remarried. You know what I mean? No, I don't mean that, honey. I don't mean that.
Totally. Right. No, yes, it does feel like a long time, but the reality is in the grand scheme of things, when we're looking at the big picture, 4 weeks is not that
Right.
long. And we have to remember we're looking at this to be for forever, right? The underlying assumption of everything we're doing here with salad with a side of fries, right, is health as the objective. The weight loss, the fat removal, that is the byproduct. That's the side effect of what happens when we focus on our health and fueling our bodies properly. So it reinforces something that I say all the time, which is that the scale is overrated, right? We want to measure success by more than just that total number on the scale. It's why we look at body fat percentage, our waist measurements and hip measurements and chest or bust or thigh, right? And your bicep, all of these areas. And we can use our energy and our sleep and our behaviors as barometers for our
Mm-hmm.
success as well and
Mm-hmm.
for our progress.
That's great. Yeah, that's great.
Because even to your point of what you were saying before, like you're doing all this stuff that's different. Those are tremendous successes that don't show up on the scale
I went to bed
immediately.
at 10:52 last night.
Wow.
I
Good for you. You guys, George used to go to bed at like 2, 3 o'clock in
on
the
a
morning.
regular basis. I literally, like, my husband and I have two different lives. He's like, I go to bed and he goes to bed and I'm like, I see him the next day, kind of thing. It's like, but now I was in bed before him. He's like, baby, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm just really tired. I'm just, and that's unusual for me to, and it was a full day. We went to the beach. We definitely socially distanced at the beach, everyone. But we went to the
Yeah.
beach and
Right.
and I got home. I was like, I just have to go to sleep. And it was wild. And that, talking about the different behaviors, measuring like different, really different. And I can see that at 8 o'clock
Yeah.
this morning, I'm wide awake. Crazy.
Yeah.
But I had 9 hours sleep.
Amazing. Right. Yeah. And even the idea of being tired at what is a quote unquote reasonable hour is a function of how you're spending your day and how you're fueling yourself and all of these components coming together. That's awesome. And it really reminds us too, even what you said before, that sometimes our perception of a plateau might really just be that we're being a little impatient or and setting unrealistic expectations. I almost hate to say this because I think it deserves like an eye roll, right? But it's like it didn't come on, the weight didn't come
I,
on overnight. It's not going to come
I
off
have coached
overnight.
myself through very tough moments of like, geez, I'm a fat ass. And I'm like, wait, I didn't put this on in a week. I'm not going to lose it in a week. I'm like, well, okay, well, how long did it take me to put it on? And then I'm trying to calculate how long it's going to take to come on. Like, okay, relax. But really, seriously.
Yeah. And the reason why, so like to add the science part, right? The reason why is remember you studied science, but for the rest of us, remember probably middle school in science, we talked about this idea of homeostasis, right? Our body is designed to maintain equilibrium. So it's going to fight us when we're trying to make these changes, right? That is survival, that it's trying to maintain homeostasis. So we have to give our body time to adjust to this new normal and to realize that these habits, these new foods and proper fuel and all that stuff isn't going away, that's the new normal and that it needs to adjust to that.
Right.
And it just takes time.
Right.
So again, as much as I hate that stupid, it didn't come on overnight, it's not going to come off overnight, but it's
No,
based
it's
on science.
and
Right.
reality, really reality.
Right. Right. And the thing is, it's about giving our body, like the same way that we emotionally give ourselves space to feel what we're feeling. We have to give our body space to respond to everything we're doing. And it requires, I think, some confidence in your plan, right? The plan you're following and the support to keep it going. So that might look like an accountability buddy, your partner, a coach. Find someone who's an incredible cheerleader for you, who will support you and remind you in a loving way, right? To keep going,
That's great.
and yeah. So a great tool for this, actually, you guys, is our membership program. It's a loving weekly email to remind you that you believe in making yourself and your health a priority. So this week, our members are getting 2 recipes that together give you a complete meal that's easy to make, delicious, and perfect for pushing through a plateau. So you're going to get the recipe for basil and chicken packets, as well as veggie packets. So I love this because the cleanup is super simple. The prep is super simple. And you can make them in the oven or on the grill because it's summer. You could get the kids involved, right? And putting the packets together. I love these recipes for you. And I'm so excited for you to get them. So if you're not yet a member, it's time to hop on the bandwagon. So go to glow.fm glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. Glow is glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. This membership was designed to give you added tools and support in a way that's accessible to everyone. So for just $10 a month, you get weekly recipes, a monthly article or tool, extra discounts from me and our partners, plus access to live Q&A sessions with me. It's really a no-brainer. And if you take advantage of these discounts, it's honestly free. So it's another way to show yourself that your health is a priority. Again, just go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. Once you're there, you can also click the link in the show notes, by the way, so you don't have to remember that URL. So once you're there, you click support now, enter your email, your payment method, hit subscribe, and that's it. You're all set. Remember, this week you'll be getting 2 recipes, the basil and chicken packets, as well as the veggie packets.
Yum,
Sounds
yum,
delicious. I'm ready to eat them now. I know. All right. So back to plateaus. So let's say you do have those 4 consecutive weeks of absolutely none of your measurements changing, right? As we said before, the biggest challenge in this is the motivation killer, right? It can stress us out. It can have us feeling defeated, ready to give up. And we don't want to do that, right? Like in the long run, we still have a reason for wanting to be healthful and fit, right? So what do? If you hit a plateau, you can break through by going back to basics. So we're going to go through a quick checklist to make sure, like George, exactly what you were saying before. Like, am I actually doing all of the pieces of the plan as they were designed? So our journal becomes critically important for this. So when you're looking at your journal, and in general, people always ask the question, well, how long do I have to do this? I recommend you want to journal for at least like 4 to 5 months or until it becomes a habit, because it will help us identify, especially in this moment of plateau, if we've let some other foods creep back in. With our journal, we can compare these 4 weeks of no measurement changes to a group of 4 weeks where we did see changes. And then it's empirical, right? It's data. We can see what's different. What do we notice about what's happening in those weeks? And perhaps you decide to use those 4 weeks where you did have changes as a menu for the next couple weeks, right? I'd be willing to bet money for most people in this situation that you've lost a bit of focus on the veggies and our mantra, which you guys all know. Dare I go an episode without saying it? Fiber. Protein and fiber at every meal. Right? Yes, you know it. Protein and fiber at every meal makes your moving fat no big deal. Right? So has that shifted at all? Right? In addition to looking at the food part, what about our water, our sleep, exercise, as George pointed out before? And the key factor here is your stress. So one of the top reasons we aren't removing fat is stress. So I'm going to direct you guys back to the mess of stress episode to dig deeper on that one, because it is a whole rabbit hole, right? But think about your daily affirmation, your stress reduction technique, all of the things that you have, going on in your life. And actually, one of my regular stress reduction techniques is thanks to one of our partners, Lumiere de Vie Skincare. So we're going to highlight them, our partner for this episode as well. Lumiere de Vie Skincare was founded by Amber Ridinger McLaughlin in response to her own experience of mere marginal results from countless costly creams. She realized the revitalization of her youthful skin could only occur if she developed products herself. Working closely with beauty scientists and exploring the most advanced ingredients derived from the earth and sea, Amber created Lumiere de Vie, the next generation of skincare. With the highest quality natural ingredients and powerful formulas that help heal, soothe, moisturize, and protect, Lumiere de Vie acts as first aid for your skin. The result? Rejuvenated, luminous, beautiful-looking skin. So whether you want a mask and a jade roller for an at-home spa experience, I mean, that might be what I do, you know. Or for the men out there, George, the hydrating aloe cream, whether it's post shave or post sun, right? You
Hmm.
went to the beach. You guys are going to love these products. So Lumiere de Vie can give you a few moments of stress reduction, or at the very least, remove the stress from your face, right? That was not their ad copy. That was
Hmm.
me. So you can do all of this. And of course, we have a discount for you. So simply text the word skin, SKIN, to 844-947-4846. You'll receive the link and coupon code for 10% off. And that's for both the men's and the women's line of products. So again, simply text the word skin, SKIN, to 844-947-4846. This is a toll-free number. Standard text and data rates may apply. All right, back to what we do to break through a plateau, right? Number one was going back to our journal and looking at a whole host of things, right? Every piece of the quote unquote plan. The second thing to break through a plateau is supplementation. So, are you taking everything regularly? You know, really, we use them until we've hit our results and then create a maintenance regimen. So remember, supplementation is designed to fill in the gaps where our nutrition falls short and to ensure that our bodies have the right nutrients to support optimal metabolism. So it's not about supplementation at the expense of food and nutrition. They are also not magic bullets, right? We can't outdo poor
Hmm.
nutrition with a few pills. Um, but it does help us see maybe we're not getting the results. Maybe we've hit a plateau because we're being a bit inconsistent, right? A true plateau can also be a great time to maybe reassess your regimen. You know, I recommend to everybody in the show notes, there's a link to get a free menu plan. And what you do there is you take a questionnaire. We call it the weight management or the weight loss profile. And it'll make a recommendation of a regimen there. So if you've hit a plateau, maybe we want to reassess. You know, maybe the piece of it that's a bigger challenge now is stress. And we could use some adaptogenic herbs to support our metabolism. As opposed to in the beginning, maybe it was really, you know, we had this leptin and ghrelin insensitivity, right? Where we didn't know when we were hungry and full and all of that kind of stuff. So again, supplementation can be an incredible tool in our back pocket when used properly. So you're going to want some support around that. Of course, I'm here for you. George, what have you noticed with what you're taking?
Well, I actually kind of think that kind of realization happened to me somewhere through the first month, and I
Mm-hmm.
started to do the more. I think when we got to this chapter on ghrelin and we started talking about hormones, I I realized, my stress level has not changed. I'm now opening up my own business, so that's a whole nother world of. It's good
Yeah.
stress, but it's also stress. In addition to leaving the old
Mm-hmm.
job. I mean, there's COVID, then there's leaving my job, opening a business. It seems like there's no relief from stress, and then suddenly I'm reading this chapter with you on cortisol, and I'm thinking, wow, I really maybe I could use that extra support. So I purchased the order on
Yeah.
what's it called? Yeah,
The
the X,
X.
right. And that's really when I started to notice a difference, and literally things started to move again. So I'm taking that every day. That's in my little daily pill box. I don't miss that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I notice it's kind of hard to remember to do my evening one before dinner. Well, not the Axe, but the other supplement that I take for
Sure.
core. I think it's
Yeah.
core. Yep.
Yep.
I take
Yep.
core in the evenings also before dinner. I'll forget to do that. But I definitely notice that I feel like I'm taking care of myself in a way that I wasn't like I am, you know, uh, there's one thing to work on stress mentally, and there's only so much
Mm-hmm.
I think I can do about that, like remind myself to take a moment and breathe. But that's like a moment
Yep.
out of 24 hours versus this idea that there's something nutritionally supporting my body. And that's, I kind of feel like that's really
Yeah.
working in a certain way. At least it's working for me psychologically, and the results are showing. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. It's so great. So, okay. So that was 2, which was supplementation. The third one is exercise, right? So have you let go of your activity, or do you need to kick up your activity? Remember, George is smiling. Remember, muscle is metabolically active. That's what burns calories and is integral to removing fat. So when we check in with our exercise, are we building muscle with strength training? Are we using our heart as a muscle with cardio? And are we creating functional muscle with flexibility training or stretching? So we want to make sure that we're getting everything in there. And then when it comes to sort of amping it up, right? We have 2 options there. Up we can up the frequency, we can up the duration, or we can up the intensity. So there's really 3 options: frequency, duration, or intensity. And I actually recommend that we focus on frequency and intensity, because the duration, I mean, we want to make sure, number one, we're not over exercising. And we want to make sure we're setting up something that is sustainable. So if all of a sudden, because now in quarantine, maybe we have extra time, and we're able to exercise 2 hours a day, which frankly, that's not for forever. We're not going to do that. And if we set ourselves up where that's what it took to get to that healthful place, we're not going to be able to live there. Does that make sense? So I would say, let's focus on intensity. So maybe it's intervals, or, which is like 30 to 60 seconds of, speeding like a sprinter, or, changing the levels on a cardio machine if you have one, and kind of doing a couple minutes high and a couple minutes low. If you're outside, it's run a few blocks, walk a few blocks, run a few blocks, walk a few blocks, so that you're getting those intervals. And maybe, again, with intensity, maybe you need heavier weights. If we're strength training, are your weights heavy enough? Especially for the women out there, do not be worried about building bulk, right? We need enough muscle, right? If you don't feel it when you're using them, you're not building muscle. It's that moment of overload when we're really changing the muscle. So, if you found something that you love doing, amazing, keep doing it. And then focus on the intensity, or we can also focus on the quality of the movement. So sometimes it's just a focus on the quality of the movement that shifts the intensity, right? I think on some level, sometimes when I'm doing a workout, like I'll have this word athlete in the back of my mind. And I have never in my life identified myself as an athlete. Like I grew up a dancer. I know that that's athletic, but because I never was like a competitive athlete or played an organized sport, I never would have used that word to describe myself. But sometimes in working out, I have that word in the back of my mind. And it's like, can I train a little more like an athlete? A little more intention, a little more intensity, a little more, focus on the quality of the movement and getting better at this thing, Or maybe all you need is a workout buddy, someone to make sure that you're showing up, right? I just gave you like 700 things to do for activity. But the point is, right, when we've hit a plateau, check in on that. Maybe we need to change it up. And there are a bunch of different ways that we can do that.
Great.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So then number 4 for breaking through a plateau is detox. So remember, fat holds toxins. Detoxifying can release those toxins. And detoxifying our body can cleanse the palate. It's like a spring cleaning for our body, right? It can help us identify our food allergies, potentially like grains, like wheat or gluten or dairy or sugar. Right? So a detox is a fantastic way to break through a plateau. We want to make sure, again, remember a plateau is 4 weeks of no measurement moving, not a single one. So typically by the time someone's really having a plateau, it's likely okay for them to detox again, right? But we don't want to do it more often than like quarterly or seasonally. That would be the most often. So if you prefer, right, if you don't want to do a detox or it's too soon to the last time you did a detox, I'll sometimes give my clients what's called like a 2-week fat shredder menu plan. And again, that's going to push us through a plateau. Similar to a detox, it's not how we're going to eat for forever, but it's a very healthful, supportive way to push through and give our body a jump start. Number 5, taking an inventory. So just like we did with the journaling, right? And looking at all the different pieces of the journal. Let's also take a life inventory. So what about medications? What about stress, sleep? What else is going on in our lives that requires our attention? Maybe we're starting a business, George, right? And we're going to come back to this in a minute. But, when we have a lot of stuff going on, sometimes what we need to do is just remember why we originally started. Why was it important for us to remove the fat and, check in on that? Another piece is maybe you've actually reached the goal that you set out. And maybe that's why sort of that motivation, quote unquote, is waning, right? Maybe the plateau is a perception that the results should be quicker, like we said before. So maybe we need to reassess what it's going to take to get to that goal number. Sometimes getting back to the original why allows other things to fall into place, right? And we can remember to set goals beyond just the number on the scale, and perhaps too, it's the goal and the timeline that we originally desired were mismatched. And those were mismatched based on our commitment level. So for example, the commitment it takes to remove 30 pounds and 5% body fat in 6 months is different than what would be required to remove 30 pounds and 5% body fat in 10 weeks, right? So is our commitment level aligned with our goals? And maybe we need to make some shifts there. With everything else going on in our lives, maybe the commitment level is different. So the thing here, and I encourage this, for everybody, whether I'm talking to my clients, like weight loss clients or entrepreneurs, we don't necessarily want to change the goal. Right? We don't want to dampen our dreams, right? We simply want to adjust the timeline so that the timeline matches the effort and the energy we're willing to give.
That's
Nodding.
great. Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah,
You're with me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. And then number 6, right? Finally, how do we break through a plateau? Or what do we do when we've hit a plateau? So this goes back to that idea of, remember when we talked about homeostasis a few minutes ago? What if, when we hit a plateau, we shift our perspective and instead of looking at it as a negative, we think about it as, look at this. My body is equalizing to this new homeostasis. What if we could say, this is actually a really good sign for the long term? And perhaps you might even consider it as a time of learning maintenance. So many of us, right? We know what it's like to be in this place of quote unquote losing weight, but we've never learned maintenance or what it's like to just live in this place of health and ease around our food. And so I'm convinced that that's part of why many people get close to, again, goal in quotes, and then slide back the other direction because we've never known this. So what if we could look at a plateau as an experiment in maintenance? So along these lines, taking, in the inventory we're taking of our life as a whole, look at everything else going on. Maybe a plateau is the best place we can be in a given moment. Maybe there's so many other things going on, right? Like a global pandemic or I feel like I just sounded like an infomercial. You know, or maybe it's a new job or a new relationship, or you're going on vacation, right? In times when we could travel and go on vacation. But, life changes, shifts in our family, when there's other stuff going on in our lives that require our focus and our attention. Maybe that's not necessarily the time to be pushing on the scale. And so I'm here, I'm giving you permission. It is okay to hang tight right where you are for a minute and come back to it for another push when you're ready. I think the most important part of this decision is to decide that you're okay hanging on to where you are for a moment, and that, where you are and all you've been doing to get to this place, we have to still hold on to practice maintenance.
Yeah, that's really
Yes?
cool, actually. I mean, just the idea I could look forward to the plateau as a recognition that I am that my body and my lifestyle is stabilizing in a new way, rather than thinking something's not working. I mean, that's really, really,
Mhm.
really cool, because if I just look back to just 6 months ago, not 4 months ago, I couldn't
Yeah.
cook enough. I couldn't make enough of the fatty, glorifying, delicious, yummy other stuff. And that fit that perspective. And now I'm making delicious foods too. Uh, and the idea that I've gotten to a plateau could be like, oh, everything is now like homeostasis is occurring in a new lifestyle, which is a whole different thing than, oh, I'm going to lose this, or I'm going to go
Yep.
backwards, or no, actually, I've never looked forward to plateaus ever in anything, you know, with the
Right.
exception of, I could say, maybe in certain, if I looked at business through the years, where there's been downturns and then I turn things around and stabilize them at a new level, there might not be an upward increase, but there is a stability, and that stability brings a certain kind of comfort, as far as, okay, something's working in business,
Yeah.
and then we can go to work on, okay, what's going to bring us to a new level, just like you're talking about here. I've just never thought of that inside of my body working for me, and that's a good thing, like a machine that's really well tuned and working. So that's very, very
Yeah.
exciting.
I'm so excited. I love it. And I hope that you guys find this super helpful as well. So there you have it, right? We have our ways to break through a plateau, to shift our mental conversation around a plateau. And of course, the true definition that we said right in the beginning. George, you remember what it was?
What time is it?
Totally.
Oh,
Remember, it's
for
4
4 weeks, right? It's
weeks.
4 weeks of no change, uh, at all,
Yeah.
having done all the things you normally do with no change. Right.
Right. So none of our measurements are changing for 4 consecutive weeks. Right. And of course, we offered a variety of options and tools and tips and tricks to break through the plateau when you are ready to. Any lingering questions on plateaus, George?
No, it's not. I mean, I could see that there. I think the one thing I have about is having been exercise is an issue, for me, as far as the world is different and my old routines about exercising are different, and I just have to, I have to motivate
Yeah.
myself more to. Although now that I'm back to work, I have a Fitbit, and I do 15,000. I do 15,000
Okay.
steps a day in my business. That's not actually that difficult to do, because I'm on my feet all day long. But but finally I'm actually getting alerts that I'm doing my steps, which hadn't been happening. So there's that piece that's kind of creeping in, and
Right.
then there's the, oh my god, I have to actually push myself a little more. So this conversation has been motivating for me, regarding, all right, it's just a matter of creating a new homeostasis regarding exercise, because I've devolved into the state I'm in now, which is my body is used to being the way my body is. Now, has been. And all I have to
Hmm.
do is keep motivating myself to stretch that to go through the plateau I have about exercise. So I can
Yeah.
embrace the plateau that I'm on regarding exercise. And it's a good thing I'm discovering I have a plateau regarding exercise. Oh, okay, good. So now I'm motivated. Thank you.
Awesome. Excellent. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So now it means that it is time for this week's nutrition nugget. Today, we're talking trans fats. So, this is going back to understanding that fat has gotten a really bad reputation over the years and recognizing that not all fat is bad. So, quick recap from weeks past: the types of fats are unsaturated and saturated. Unsaturated are the ones we want. They are a liquid at room temperature. Think, olive oil, right? Saturated are a solid at room temperature. And we do need a little bit of this, but we don't need to focus on it because we'll get it through our food choices, especially if you eat animal protein, right? So a good example of saturated fat is like the marbling in a steak, right? If that's left out at room temperature, it's not like it melts. That's a solid at room temperature. Okay. There's one type of saturated fat that we want to avoid completely, and that is trans fat. So a trans fat was at one time a liquid at room temperature. The food manufacturers pump it full of hydrogen to make it a solid at room temperature. So this changes the chemistry of the fat, and it allows it to have a really long shelf life, which is frankly kind of scary, but that's maybe a whole other conversation, right? And it's used in processed foods and packaged foods to keep them fresh, in quotations, right? And moist, although I hate that word, as they sit on the shelves, right? So here's where it gets tricky, because if you remember, years ago, the FDA said that there could no longer be trans fats in our foods. And now we see all the packages with call outs on the front of the box saying 0 grams of trans fats, right? Or trans fat free. But remember that these food labels are written in terms of a single serving size. And a food label can say 0 grams of trans fat if it contains 0.5 grams or less per serving. So, right. So it can actually have trans fats in it and still say 0 grams of trans fats. So this requires us to be super savvy consumers and learn to read the ingredients on the package so that we know if there really are trans fats in it or not. The words that we're looking for in the ingredient list are, get your pens, modified, fractionated, hydrogenated, or hydrolyzed. And it'll be one of those words paired with like a vegetable oil. So it might say fractionated corn oil or modified soybean oil, right? And remember, we have to read the ingredients because no one on the planet will ever be deficient in trans fats, right? They are the worst of the bad fats, chemically modified to be more solid at room temperature and added to foods to make them more shelf stable. So as I often say, the longer the food's shelf life, the shorter yours, right? Insert another sound effect. Dun, dun. Right? But really, understanding what trans fats are, the fact that we don't need them at all, and how to identify them in foods, even if the food says that it doesn't have trans fats in it on the front of the package, and even if the number on the nutrition facts says it's 0, it actually can be there. Of course, this goes without saying, but if we just stick to the foods that don't have a label, right, like your vegetables and fruits, you're golden. Still, we want to keep this info in our back pockets because we're human. And at some point in life, we'll probably eat food that has a label.
Yep.
Right? So now you know the truth of
Wow,
trans fats.
that's great. I had no idea that they could count trans fats that way. That's wild. Wow.
Isn't it crazy? I know our food supply and those kinds of what's allowed to be in our
Mhm.
nutrition and our foods is a whole
Mhm.
soapbox issue. But George, thank you for joining me
Oh, it's
from
my pleasure. It's
afar.
been great. Really, really learned a lot. Really learned a
Good.
lot. I didn't expect. I just didn't. I didn't know. I didn't. You're fabulous, and your show is great. Thank you so much for having me be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to have you join me. As always, guys, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram at Jenn Trepeck, JennTrepeck. Our Facebook page is also by the same handle, and we want to hear from you. So submit your questions, ideas, your takeaway videos, all of this. Social media is really the easiest way to reach out and even to inquire about working with me directly, like George, or addressing any of your personal concerns. Of course, if you're not already, join our membership program by going to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries to get this week's recipes for basil chicken packets and veggie packets to make a complete meal in just a few minutes in the oven or the grill. And of course, super clean to keep you on track, right? All right, everybody, have confidence in your plan. Know that you've got this, and we've got you. We'll see you next Wednesday. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.